Okay, so we're going to talk now about supplemental warps. There's lots of different things you can do with these. I'll show you a noodle and I'll show you how to weave onto one. So the first thing we want to do is take a little bit of extra warp. You can just use plain old string to twine, whatever you have hidden around the house. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it through the back of my tapestry. And I want one end to be left on the front. And then, making sure that I go around the back of a warp thread, I'm going to come back through. So all I'm really doing is I'm using this tapestry needle to anchor it to the back of the tapestry around one warp. You can also weave it in as you're going, but that requires some advanced planning that I'm not always capable of. So this is setting up our warp. Now that we've got this extra warp on here, we can do a number of things. We could weave over and under it. We could wrap it and create a noodle, but for any of that stuff to work, we also need some weft anchored in the same place. So I'm just going to take this little bit of purple yarn here, and I'm going to thread it onto the tapestry needle. Whoops. And you can watch where you're going and just leave a loose end. I'm going to tie a little tiny knot in the end of this just to give it a little bit of resistance so I can tell where that end is when I'm pulling it through. So I'm pulling this through the back of the tapestry in the same place as that weft or that supplemental warp. So now I've got my warp threads and my weft threads. And the first thing I'll show you is how to, if you wanted to weave a little extra bit with this, you just do a figure 8. You're just going over and under. And what I usually do is do a little bit and then tighten it all up. So I'm going to go through a bunch of times and then push it up to the top and tighten it up. You can also create surface knots doing this. The other thing that you can do, let me get a little bit smaller end here. Once you've done this, you actually don't need the needle anymore, and you may find other methods of yarn management a little bit more helpful. So I'm going to make a quick butterfly out of this to make it a little bit easier to manage. Okay, so whoops, I guess I got a little bit more to go on the butterfly there. Okay, so butterfly will make this yarn a little bit easier to manage than if it were on a needle, and I'll show you that woven supplemental warp. So to do the woven version, these two threads need to be under tension, and you're just going over and under, around and under each one, right? And when you get enough passes, you just snug it up over one underneath the other. You can see how much easier this is for me to manage now with the butterfly as opposed to how it was with the needle. A lot of people think it's easier to weave with a tapestry needle than with butterflies or bobbins. I think if you're working very small, that's true, but if you're working on anything that's more than couple 3 inches wide, it really is a lot easier not to have needles. I think, of course, whatever your preference is, that's great. So you can see already I've got, this is a little tiny bit loopy because I've been doing it relatively fast. You can also, to keep tension on these, you can tie them to your hand, you can sit on them, a lot of different things that you can do. So this can give you whole bunch of extra texture on the surface, and this is like a woven band that goes over the top. So when we're ready to go to the next section of it, I just take that, anchor that around a warp thread, and now I can do something different. So now I'm going to wind it. So this is just a wrap or a noodle. So whoops, cut my tapestry fork there. I'm just going to go around and around and around. A faster way to do this is to twist it and then push it up. So instead of struggling with all that around and around and around, once you've kind of got that motion, twist and push is way faster. And now that I've got this going, I can anchor this noodle someplace else. So on the first thing, after I wove that little bit, I anchored it at the top at my fell line, but you can anchor it other places. So this next one, if I can find where to put down my tapestry needle, I think I'm going to anchor, here it is. I'm going to anchor by needling it in. So I just take my tapestry needle, see if I can get both of the thicknesses of this through. Never have a threader near the video camera. Okay, whoops. Do one at a time. Okay. And actually, even just anchoring one of them through is sufficient. So I've got one of my two ends here. I'm going to anchor it behind one warp thread. You can see I've inserted the needle just behind a single warp thread there. Now I've pulled that one tight, and there my noodle is anchored. Now I can keep going, either noodling or weaving, whichever I want to do with the other one. So you can see that by using a combination of, weaving or creating noodles, I can create all of these surface textures all over the front of my tapestry, literally anywhere I want to go. One of the questions people ask about this is, why wouldn't you just do this after your tapestry is off the loom? And the answer is pretty easy. It's because this whole set of techniques is a lot easier when the tapestry is still on the loom under tension. You absolutely can do it on a finished tapestry, but it's a lot harder with a fabric that's moving around. Think of this as just like having something on an embroidery frame, where that tension, or quilting frame, where that tension is helping you do the detail that you want to do. So this one again, and it's just, notice when I anchor, it is just the warp threads that I'm anchoring. I'm keeping the weft on the surface. So I've got this kind of nice little blob and a snake happening here, and that is a supplemental warp. The last thing I'll say about this is, if you really wanted to get fancy, you could put multiple pairs of supplemental warps on. So this could be, instead of 2 warp threads, 4 or 6 or whatever combination, to do a broader band on this part. That is supplemental warp.